Hey, I'm glad to be with you and encourage you one more time. Today, I'm sharing a brief testimony, not the whole thing, but I wanted to talk about why I became a tither. I am intentional about the first 10%. I am intentional, and I will say this again, about the first 10% that I give to God. I am convinced that tithing works. I'm convinced that tithing will make a difference in your resources. I'm convinced that God honors your tithe. That's biblical. And I'm also convinced that tithing makes you a better steward, a better manager of your resources. I've probably been a consistent tither going on about 9 years or so. I was in a season where I noticed that my resources were being blessed. I was working 2 jobs at the time, and God had been very kind. I had just gotten married, or I was engaged actually, and was able to buy a car because I had a second job. And something in me was like, you just need to honor God, honor God. I started tithing. I just started saying, you know what? I want to honor God with my 10%. I was growing and prospering in a few ways, and I wanted to honor God. Well, let me tell you what happened. The skies didn't necessarily open up. Nothing immediately happened for me other than me honoring the tithe. Would you believe I lost both of those jobs? Would you believe that whatever happened, whether life circumstances, I lost both of those jobs. And went through a financial drought. I went 3 whole years without working full time. Not because I couldn't, but because, it was just a very difficult season. I had part-time jobs and went through a lot of crazy stuff financially with my home and automobiles, even moved in with family for a while. But let me tell you something about not having resources took the fear out of giving away. Now, I had already committed to being a tither, and I could have said, well, God, I lost my jobs. I lost my resources. My family's struggling. I'm getting foreclosure letters and all kinds of stuff. I got to move out of my place. I just got a family. I got a growing family. I'm tithing, and I'm seeing the opposite of what I expect from my tithe. I'm tithing, and I'm seeing the opposite of what I would expect from my giving. But I just honored that commitment. I stayed consistent. I would give $5 out of a 50, $10 out of 100, because I was convinced that God would honor his word concerning my life. Well, I would just say this. Something about not having resources took the fear out of giving away. It really did. There are some seasons in your life when what you got ain't gonna pay the bills that you need to be paid anyway. Maybe that's not everybody's place you've been, but that's a place I've been. And when you get to that place, you realize I might as well give this to God, at least try to honor God in my giving, because this isn't going to pay this bill. What I have is only going to stretch so far. And the Lord began to show me how to be a giver. Can I be honest? In hindsight, I was stingy. In hindsight, I was financially stingy. In hindsight, I was not a giver. I would even remember going to restaurants, and my wife would ask how much of a tip I would leave, and we'd have a whole debate over it. I was not that person. I became that person, but God allowed me to go through a season where finances were not strong, and it did something in my heart. It took the fear out of giving, and I said, God, whatever I'm in a lot of crazy stuff financially, but if you shift my season, shift my life, financially bless me, I promise you I will give you the first 10%. I stopped tithing in between that time for personal. I don't see the resources coming. I don't see the fruit coming out. I stopped tithing a little bit, but something in me said, well, I got no other option. I'm trying everything. I'm going to job after job interview. I'm trying to figure things out financially and it's not working. And I said, you know what, Lord, let me renew my commitment. Let me renew my commitment. People ask me about giving and why I'm such a giver. It's because I have the experience that the only explanation for certain things that I believe God continues to grace and provide for me is because I honor the 10%. I actually honor more than the 10%, but because I'm intentional about that. And this is what I believe by faith. I believe that as I honor God in my giving, God does what his word says. He opens up a window in heaven. I don't have room enough to receive. And here's my favorite verse, 2 Corinthians 9. He'll send grace to me. There's a grace that God sends attached to your giving. There's a grace that you can't get on your own. There's a grace that you can't walk into on your own. There's a grace God has to grace you to do. There's a favor. I would dare call it a financial grace that comes to you when you honor God. And I would not tell you that it wasn't hard. I wouldn't tell you that there weren't financial struggles. I wouldn't tell you that things always turn out the way I wanted them to. But when I look back over it, because I continue to honor the tithe, God has expanded things in my life that I know is nothing but the grace of God. God has sent people and places and opportunities to show me favor. And I believe that if there's one thing other than the principle that you should honor, it's the fact that God's going to send you grace and favor. I will always give the first 10% of my giving. I will always preach about giving. I tithe. I sow seed. I give charitably. I just know that there's something I'm doing when I give, when I put in the whatever you want to call it, into the world, put your seed into the ground, into the atmosphere, whatever. There is something about it that God honors. And my experience is I can only tell you that for me, I knew that I had to start giving 10%. I knew that I had to start tithing. I knew that I had to be consistent in it. I knew that I couldn't just stop and start. I knew that I had to keep doing it. And one of the reasons I want to share this video with you is because even if it's a small amount, 10% is 10%. Start there. Honor it there. If you want to see something different in your finances, I'll say it like this. God can do more with your 90% than you can do with your 100%. I'm graced. I'm favored. I'm not saying that everything is what you would imagine, but what I will tell you is I have more now than I used to. And God continues to send grace to me. And I love to give. I can't wait to give. I can't wait to sow. And as soon as I get anything, a Cash App, a PayPal, a paycheck, I say, that 10% is a holy thing. That's another reason that you should tithe. It's a holy thing. It's a holy thing to God. And when I tell you there's only so much your resources can do, but there's a supernatural grace that comes on your giving. And as you give to God, God's going to send people, institutions, and resources to give to you. I knew for me that I could not lead God's people, honor God's church, and not be a giver. And I said for myself, God, I need you to do something for me that I can't do for myself. I'm going to honor your giving. I'm going to honor the tithe. And the Lord has blessed me with homes. The Lord has blessed me with automobiles. The Lord has blessed me to pay down debt. The Lord has blessed me to have deposits that I would not share now. But I know that if it were not the grace of God on my life, that there would be no way possible I could do some things in my own power. I want you to stop doing your finances in your own power. Is it a sacrifice? Perhaps. And the thing is, people say, well, Pastor, I can't afford to tithe. Well, I would flip it on you. I don't think you can afford not to tithe, because it is the tithe that God sends the favor, the grace that will abound toward you. And I want to encourage you that if you want to see a new level of grace on your finances this year, I want you to start out saying, God, I'm going to honor this 10%, and I'm going to believe you to do something supernatural in my finances. That's my prayer for you. That's my prayer for your family, that you see financial abundance because you choose to honor the tithe. The Lord will increase you more and more as you honor the system. As I always say, if you honor the system will honor you. Start tithing this year. Start being a consistent giver. Start being a sower. Start being a giver. You're going to see the Lord begin to show you favor in new ways. That's just a brief testimony, but send me a message. Send me a DM. Let's talk more about it. I would love to share you more about the testimonies of how God has financially favored our church, how God has taken my house out of foreclosure, how God has allowed me to provide in ways that I know is only the hand of God, how I've been able to walk away from a full-time job and the Lord continues to send grace and favor. And I'm believing for more and more increase and more grace because I told the Lord I'm going to honor more and more. I believe your life is changing when you stop being stingy and you start trusting God with your giving. Won't you sow? Won't you tithe? Start this year. God's going to shift your life. Let me know how you feel about it. Shoot me a message. Let's talk about it soon. It's been my pleasure to talk to you. We'll talk again.